We're on our way to the Russian-Georgian border. It's believed that in spite of EU sanctions, Western goods are making their way into Russia here, a country waging war. We're going to try to find out whether this is true.
Has anything changed here in the last months? Nothing. It's like it's always been.
We're in Georgia. The former Soviet Republic is these days oriented towards Europe. It wants to join the EU, but it also still has close economic ties with Russia. What happens here in the Caucasus is a determining factor for the success of Western sanctions. Goods that could be used by the military, such as cutting-edge technology, drones, or replacement parts for the oil industry may no longer be exported to Russia. Georgia officially supports the sanctions, but what is really happening on the ground? We meet Miodrag Soric in the city of Tsugdidi. She's a member of the local parliament and takes us to a border control station.
The police are watching us.
Yes. This officer seems nervous. He wants to ask his boss if we're allowed to film here. Meanwhile, one van after another passes through the security gate. Some have to stop for inspection. The green garbage truck, however, is allowed right through. Although over the next hours it keeps driving back and forth every 10 minutes. It isn't clear what it's carrying, but what is clear is that the authorities are looking the other way. Miodrag Soric says she knows what's happening.
They closely inspect the normal trucks, but turn a blind eye to smugglers.
This here is a special checkpoint. The Georgian city of Tsugdidi lies on the disputed border with Abkhazia. Under international law, the territory belongs to Georgia, but it has been under Russian control since the early 90s. Many people in Abkhazia have Russian citizenship. For the sanctions, this means that everything that enters Abkhazia is de facto in Russia. That's why the disputed border here is so important. From now on, we can only film undercover. The officer wants to get rid of us.
Our government knows about everything that's going on here. But it's turning a blind eye. When our partners to the West say that things are being smuggled across the border to Russia, well, they're right.
Norwegian economist Erlend Bolmen Bjortvedt confirms this. He has traced the various routes over which sanctioned goods enter Russia.
So you can actually stand with a truck in Georgia, but de facto find yourself on Russian-controlled territory.
And Abkhazia is only one possible path. According to Bjortvedt, the data paints a very clear picture.
We have trade data also for Russia, so we can actually see goods flowing into Russia from third countries. We can see what kind of good, even how many kilos or pieces of goods. And then we've also found some of the goods in Russia. For example, drones with camera having been exported by Western countries have been found in Russia. So it's quite clear that Western goods are flowing to Russia despite the sanctions.
We drive to the capital, Tbilisi. We've arranged to meet in the Ministry of Finance with Otar Rekadze.
From the beginning of the sanctions, we are doing our best to control all the goods and all the companies or all the persons who are in the sanctions list by these G7 countries and other countries who have imposed these sanctions.
But statistics indicate a different picture. While German companies have been reducing their deliveries to Russia, they've been increasing their exports to Russia's neighbors. to Georgia by 48% in the first quarter of 2023 compared with the previous year, to Armenia by 132%, and to Kyrgyzstan by 773%. Georgia and Russia's other neighboring countries haven't suddenly become rich enough to afford the increased imports. The only plausible reason for the rise? Some of the goods are making their way into Russia. Most Georgians, such as these protesters, are highly critical of their powerful neighbor to the north. The overwhelming majority here want to join the EU and NATO and show strong solidarity with Ukraine. For opposition member of parliament Anna Nachflushvili, the question of sanctions is a kind of litmus test for which direction the government is steering the country in. She wants Georgia to prevent dual-use items from reaching Russia. These can be used for both civil and military purposes, such as microchips.
The Prime Minister could not respond to the question, give me a single act, a law, a bylaw, an order by a minister which regulates the issue and makes Georgia protected from the risk of becoming a black hole. Because you cannot govern a state by oral statements. You need to have legislative acts.
Erlen Bolman Bjortvet doesn't think this is a coincidence.
They have neither the legal frameworks nor the will or the motivations to stop this trade. After all, from their part, this is not illegal. So it is not illegal for Georgia to export to Russia or to facilitate exports to Russia.
If no corresponding laws or guidelines exist, they can't be broken. This leads to a gray area in which trade of sanctioned products ultimately goes unpunished. At the same time, the Georgian government knows that Russian troops are already stationed on Georgian territory, such as in Abkhazia. These troops could reach Tbilisi in no time. All this stokes the conflict between Georgia's wish to pivot westward and the harsh geopolitical reality. We meet Katia Nikolashvili. The accusations made by her anti-corruption NGO, the National Agency of Public Registry, go even further. She takes us along to the city administration's vehicle fleet. Once again, we are given the brush off. No filming allowed. We go to the back of the property. There they are, Russian Kamaz trucks, which, according to Khatia Nikolashvili, were bought with taxpayer funds in 2022 after the war started. Kamaz is a company that is half owned by the Russian state. The Russian army uses Kamaz military and armored vehicles in its invasion of Ukraine. The company is on the sanctions list. Trading with a company like this, which is financed by taxpayers' money, is a serious offense.
The fact that Georgia buys the trucks from the Kamaz, we can say that it's indirectly financing the war in Ukraine, which is a very terrible thing.
DW contacted the mayor of Tbilisi for comment, but the inquiry remained unanswered. We drive to the edge of town, Western vehicles as far as the eye can see. We're at one of the biggest car markets in the Caucasus. Since the start of the war, Russians haven't been allowed to buy expensive luxury cars directly in the West, a sanction targeting affluent Russians. The ban also aims to prevent the use of certain vehicles to transport officers to the front.
There is a lot of use in having a strong diesel car, an SUV, a Geländewagen, at the battlefield. So we see these cars being used both for luxury and for battlefield purposes.
Just how easy is it to acquire vehicles with high horsepower at markets like this? With a hidden camera, we ask a dealer.
Kazakhs, Georgians, Azeris, and Armenians come here to buy ordinary cars. Maybe they're also buying the cars for Russia. It goes like this. A Kyrgyz buys a car, brings it to Kyrgyzstan, and sells it there. They're all middlemen here.
So how would such a car get to Russia? One option is completely legal. The car travels via Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea to Kyrgyzstan. From there, it's easy, as Kyrgyzstan has a customs union with Russia. We keep looking. Hardly anyone wants to talk to us. We discover that there are apparently several ways of getting around the sanctions.
The car goes to Russia, then to Kazakhstan, and then to Kyrgyzstan by train. Do you understand? The vehicle comes in on a rail car.
That's the official route. But the traders hint that once the car is on Russian territory, there's no guarantee its journey won't end there. We hear that another route to Russia goes via Armenia and decide to go. It's a 2-hour drive to the Georgian-Armenian border. Filming is strictly prohibited. Just before the border are car haulers. The drivers don't want to say anything on camera. On this export route, a car is brought from Georgia to Armenia and is given new papers there. Armenia is part of the customs union with Russia, meaning a car can go from Armenia to Russia completely legally. Back in Georgia's capital, Tbilisi, we want to find out exactly how it works and try to send a luxury car to Russia ourselves. This Mercedes from an Iranian dealer catches our eye. The car is in great condition, with hardly any miles and a leather interior. We agree on $55,000.
Is there a way of getting the car to Moscow?
We're told the car could be exported via Iran and the Caspian Sea to Russia, another possible loophole. That's enough for us, and we cancel the purchase. It's becoming clear that in this highly complex geopolitical region, many well-intended Western sanctions quickly fail when they clash with reality. Our next test, one of Georgia's key port towns on the Black Sea, Poti. To really hurt Russia's economy, Russian exports of raw materials have to be targeted, as these are Moscow's biggest source of income. Western sanctions are meant to stop Russian oil shipments by sea. But when we meet Vaso Urushadze from an anti-corruption NGO, he tells us there is evidence indicating that raw materials from Russia are being traded here in the port.
This is a base for the Russian company Rosneft. Petroleum products from Russia are brought here. Then documents are altered to obscure the origins, and then they're exported to third-party countries.
By rail, for example. Near the harbor, we find wagons which transport the petroleum products onward. The signs say that they originate in Moscow and St. Petersburg. With these logistics, oil products can easily be transported further. Erland Bolman Bjortvedt says that Russia has generally been very quick to find ways to export oil in spite of the sanctions.
There's been re-flagging of tankers. There is a big shadow fleet, which consists of maybe 10% of all oil tankers in the world. So we see, unfortunately, that Russia is rigging itself to get access to a shadow fleet, which provides for their exports.
Our final test. We drive directly to the Russian border. If trickery, deceit, and smuggling are even taking place here, then it's likely that turning a blind eye is happening by design. The sheer number of trucks waiting here seems suspicious to us. This isn't what a drop in exports from Russia is supposed to look like.
How long do you have to wait to get to the border? 2, 3 days? We've been creeping forward for 4 days. There are more trucks.
We'd like to know whether inspections are stricter since Western sanctions were imposed.
With the Georgians, you're done in 2 minutes and can drive on. Nothing has changed. It's like it's always been. Nothing has changed.
It would be possible if Georgia and other neighbor countries had a will to technically control this trade. You can check what is inside the trucks, but I don't expect countries like Georgia or Kazakhstan or other of Russia's neighbors to actually control or even limit this trade.
A further sign of how lax things are here is this truck with one license plate from Russia and one from Lithuania. The driver dismisses it.
They're only numbers. They're only numbers.
We say goodbye to the drivers and make our way back to the capital. On our journey across Georgia, we found many loopholes for circumventing the imposed sanctions. Many people profit from the increased trade volume. But the EU has just approved a further sanctions package restricting the export of certain Western exports to third countries, such as Kazakhstan, Armenia, or Georgia. Experts like Erlen Bolman-Bjortvedt welcome this, as it's unlikely Western companies who profit from the loopholes would have taken action.
I believe many Western exporters are aware of what is happening because of the magnitude of this trade. And it is probably up to Western countries themselves to ensure that the sanctions are working efficiently.
What's certainly hurting Russia's economy is that trade via third countries raises the prices of products that make it into Russia. And it got less money for its oil exports when India and China demanded big discounts, riding on the fact that the number of countries buying Russian oil is limited. This has affected Russia's national budget, as it relies on the petroleum business to a great degree. And Georgia? The country must decide where it sees its future. If it still wants to join the EU and NATO, it will have to implement Western sanctions on Russia effectively.